All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's presentation on COVID-19 in the band room and beyond. My name is Joshua Hecht. I'm the director here with the Drum Major Leadership Academy, and I'm honored to be speaking with each of you tonight and welcome you to our conversation. Tonight's session is very important. Through the various challenges that COVID-19 brings to each of our programs, we're going to be discussing the scientific findings, the potential problems, as well as the innovative solutions that we can bring to make this year as successful and as meaningful as possible for each of our programs. Tonight's discussion will be led by Professors Barry Hauser and Justin McAdams, as well as DMLA instructors Kelley Powell and Joseph Kim. If at any points you have any questions for anyone on this team, feel free to leave us a comment in the Facebook comments below, or else to the right side of the YouTube chat if you're watching with us live on YouTube. For those of you streaming on YouTube, again, that chat is over to the right. We encourage you to join in on the conversation, invite the directors, students, and peer leaders that you have from your programs, and are looking forward to sharing tonight's conversation with each of you. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Joseph Kim to get tonight's conversation started. Joseph?
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Josh. My name is Joseph Kim. I am an instructor with DMLA. I'm also a student at the University of Illinois, where I study electrical engineering. And I'm a trumpet player for the Marching Illini, where I perform with Professor Barry Hauser. And in 2019, I was a conductor for the Troopers Drum and Bugle Corps. Kelley, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you, Joseph. My name is Kelley Powell. I'm a student at the University of South Carolina, entering my 4th year as a music education major and 2nd year as drum major with the Carolina Band. And we are so excited tonight to be joined by Professor Barry Hauser and Mr. Justin McAdams. Professor Hauser, would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about how you've been involved with the COVID situation and the band community at large?
Yeah, certainly. It's great to be with you all this evening, and looking forward to our conversation tonight. A topic that, yes, is very important and changing not only daily, but seems to be changing hourly as we have all put together multiple plans. And I'm sure any students out there, you're probably on plan 202 at this point, with an opportunity to pivot once again. So I've had the wonderful opportunity and privilege. This will be my 10th year at the University of Illinois, serving as the Associate Director of Bands, Director of the Marching Illini, and serving as also the Director of Fighting Illini Athletic Bands. I teach courses in the School of Music there, conducting some music education courses, and certainly a lot with our athletic bands, and get to work with awesome students like Joseph and many others as well. Before that, I taught in the public schools. I never really had a want to teach at the collegiate level, kind of fell into it. So I spent 10 years basically between Florida and Indiana, and each of those positions were very unique and very different. But again, when I was teaching in Indiana, I actually taught in 5 different buildings every day, 3 elementary schools, middle school, and a high school. So I understand a great deal what our public educators are going through right now, especially a lot of our, not to say that our high school directors have it easier, but I think, there's been so much information about our secondary educators. We haven't talked a whole lot about what we do for our beginning band directors out there and what can they do when they're starting there's a lot of challenges with that. So I had the great opportunity to be in education for this. This will be my 21st year now. I also serve as the director and president of Smith Walbridge Clinics, the nation's first the nation's first marching band leadership camp established back in 1949. So it's a great honor to serve in that capacity, a camp that I attended as a kid, and just again kind of fell into these opportunities. And more than anything, just again have been so grateful to be able to give back during this time of COVID. With regard to what we've been doing with COVID and kind of my role with things, I serve as the athletic band chair for the College Band Directors National Association. So since March, we've been putting plan after plan together, and just more than anything beyond these plans, sending a message of hope. That, we're going to get through this. We're all in this together. And the biggest thing is we've got to keep music education alive. It's so easy in this time to shut things down. But, we continue to hear this cliche phrase that our students need us. Well, you know what? Yes, our students do need this, but also we all need music to continue. And if we think that this battle is an uphill battle now, if we cease any type of music education at this point in time, we are going to have a tremendous battle when COVID is over, or whatever that's going to look like, hopefully sooner than later. And part of those concerns are exactly what I talked about with those beginning band students. If we do not have beginning bands starting off here shortly, this could be something that's going to have lasting implications for the next 7 to 10 years, if not further. So it's an important topic. Looking very forward to sharing information. Mr. McAdams and I became Facebook official a number of hours ago, and we've already hit it off pretty well. So I think we're going to be of similar mindset. So looking very forward to, again, sharing this time with you all. And any questions, please fire away. We're not going to have all the answers, but hopefully we can help a little bit and give some peace of mind to what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Professor Hauser. Mr. McAdams, would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your experience in schools as well?
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for having me tonight. My name is Justin McAdams. I am the band director and performing arts coordinator for the Phoenixville Area School District in southeastern Pennsylvania. This is my 18th year of teaching. I've been at Phoenixville for 7 years. I taught at another school here in Pennsylvania for a decade before that, and I taught in Delaware as well for a year. Serve a couple of other different hats beyond doing that. I serve as the president currently for PMEA's District 12, which is all of southeastern Pennsylvania. It's about 400 music educators. I'm the vice president for our local marching band organization, Cavalcade of Bands. And this would have been my 21st summer, actually, as a lead instructor and clinician for the George N. Parks Drum Major Academy. So that's been a part of my life for a very long amount of time. And like Professor Hauser, I was a student. I went to DMA back when I was in high school, and to kind of be able to be a part of that and to continue that tradition alive, I think that's an important thing. And just keeping traditions alive is important here in music as well. As Barry was talking about, we've got to look at how do we maintain through a very tumultuous time right now, so that we can come out on the other side of this. It's going to be different, but we have to be able to come out on the other side of it. So I'm a drill writer as well for the area. I write for a bunch of high school programs. And, I'm also the designer for the Hawthorne Caballeros, one of the DCA corps here on the East Coast. So.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. It's so great. I'm really looking forward to it. And just to dive right into the conversation, we'd love if you could tell us a little bit about what your band camp or preseason camp is looking like going into this fall season, and what the marching band season or your indoor ensembles are going to be looking like in this coming school year.
We have like 5 hours to talk about that. Well, I'll tell you, we just finished camp this past week. So normally, we do a 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for a week and a half. But we kind of threw that idea out very quickly back in June when we realized that that just wasn't going to be possible with all the health restrictions. So we reduced down to a 4-hour block every night this past week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And there was a hurricane that came through the East Coast as well too. Actually, one of the things that, especially in Pennsylvania, that we can't do is, at least for the summer, we can't be inside. Everything has to be outside. And Monday night we had a rain threat, so like we had an hour rehearsal, and then it was, all right, kids, see you tomorrow. Oh, there's a hurricane. Let's hope this blows through. So it was a great start to the 2020 season. But fortunately, the hurricane blew through. We were able to have a camp, albeit a little bit different. But yeah, so I mean, every school in Pennsylvania, we had to come up with a return to play kind of plan back at the end of June. From an athletic and an activity standpoint, and then the school whole reopening plan. So what we did is with Cavalcade of Bands here in southeastern Pennsylvania, we put together a document that was based a lot on some of the stuff that came out of the CBDNA workshop and the NFHS guidelines, something concrete for our directors to be able to go to their schools and say, look, we can start up band in a safe of an environment as possible with all this national guidance. So we followed that, and so far it's working. I mean, it's weird, everyone's kind of walking around like this, but you start to get used to it after a while.
Well, we're kind of handcuffed a little bit by what is decided by the state of Illinois. And a big part of that is, we're limited to 50 or less. And so in looking at this all, that has changed and modified our plans a great deal. Now, of course, there's so many things. And Justin, these are some of the times I was like, man, I want to, not that it's easier at the high school level, so please don't take it that way. But I'm like, man, there's so many fewer people, it seems like, that you have to answer to. And you find out in these times, these challenging times, how many things have to be vetted. So, we've got the Big Ten Conference, we've got the NCAA, we've got our own university, we've got the governor's office, we've got athletics. So, in looking at all these things, this is something that I feel many of our plans are really determined by other folks besides ourselves. And I know the same can be said at the high school level too. I mean, we just take the information that we have and we make those decisions along the way. So our plans at Illinois have changed quite a bit. And we made the decision pretty early on as well that if we're going to have football, no football, we're still going to move forward. But what is that going to look like? We're giving our students 3 different options because the university gave them some options of staying at home and attending classes remotely, or they can come to campus and do things face-to-face. A big part of that is their plan of, we have a saliva test that was developed that our students, faculty, and staff have to be tested twice a week. And those results are turned around within 3 to 4 hours. So you know pretty quickly if someone is positive, negative, and you can react pretty quickly to that. So based on that maybe gives us a little more security of some of these things face-to-face that we can move forward with. The other 2 options for our students, they've got kind of a hybrid mix to where they can do a lot remotely and they can do a couple things face-to-face. And then the third option is doing some things remotely still, but there's going to be the opportunity, if football moves forward, to actually be part of the football games. Now, that being said, 50 people or less, that really kind of restricts an ensemble where we have a set instrumentation normally of 375, to do pregame and to do halftime and those things. It just kind of handcuffs us a great deal. So we are looking currently at playing in the stands. All of our stadiums are going to be socially distanced. So we're looking at, again, typically a capacity of 60,000 is now going to be 10 to 12,000. There's no tailgating. So those that have been part of that collegiate experience, that's a big part of your band's role, is to participate with those that are tailgating, things along those lines. So, a lot of people have asked, well, if you're going to do some things remotely, what do you do? So, of course, we're going to do kind of some things that we normally do, music memorization tests and checkoffs, making sure that we're passing on the institutional knowledge. We're going to do some video modules of our visual fundamentals. So this is something that we've not been able to really do before because we're always teaching to the test of getting pregame, halftime, 3-and-1, all these things and all these traditions that we have to do. So in a lot of ways, we're going to use these video modules as much more objectively than just saying, all right, you look good, so you're passed off. We're going to actually have a pretty systematic approach that, okay, let's see you actually do a glide step. Let's see you on what your posture looks like and giving some pertinent feedback. It's really, everything that we're looking at is really about the overall development of each student. And not to say that any of us haven't been focused on that before, because that is our focus, but we're going to be able to do that in much greater detail than ever before. Along with that, we've looked at this from the perspective of, we're going to have synchronous learning going on, and we're going to have a lot of things asynchronously as well. So I put together a great leadership series that are going to be, I think very exciting for everybody in terms of how they're going to move forward with whatever career path that they're taking. These are going to be skills that everyone can benefit from. It's not just going to be music related, but some things that they can take to become a better citizen of the world as well. With a lot of the political things that have taken place and a lot of the tragedies that have taken place, with Black Lives Matter, we are actually doing a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion training as well for our students. We put together a DEI committee, and we're getting this off the ground. So there's going to be a lot that we're doing there. We're looking at doing some partnerships with some HBCU schools, historically Black college universities, that we've not been able to do. So that's going to be virtual, but some really awesome things that, again, we're not technically able to do because of the schedule and how fast it is when you're turning these shows around. We've got some master classes planned and other things like that. So in a lot of ways, I feel we're giving every student, and depending on where their comfort level is, the opportunity to participate in some capacity. So whether remotely, whether a hybrid fashion, it's face-to-face, depending on where that comfort level is. So it's a 35-page document right now that is going and being vetted through every administrative office on campus, the governor's office, and even in athletics, and how that's dealt with the Big Ten Conference as well. So that's a little light on what things are going to look like. They just released a new schedule for the Big Ten 2 days ago. Originally, that first game was supposed to take place October 17th. Well, less than a month before our first game, it was announced that we have a Thursday night game against Ohio State on September 3rd. So I, once again, have pivoted to change our original plan of, at camp, we were looking at probably decreasing that and not doing a whole lot with that and possibly even moving virtually. We have cranked some of those efforts back up because we're going to have to turn some things around pretty quickly, knowing that our first Big Ten game, especially against Ohio State, is September 3rd. So interesting times.
It's funny that you started by saying you wish you were sometimes back at the high school level because there's less people to report to. Right now I'm going, I kind of wish I was at the college level because we just found out how we're teaching this fall last night, and we start school in 3 weeks. So
I know it's this constant exchange, right?
And we've gone, I mean, and every school district like in Pennsylvania is kind of going in 5 different directions because there's really no state guidance on that other than, follow the health guidelines that are out there. But it is changing almost on a daily basis. And every time it changes, it's like, all right, I'm going to take this piece of paper and notebook, fill that out. All right, let's start this again. So, but it's interesting to hear how, all different levels are approaching this. But I think the goal is that we're trying to make this the best experience possible for students, in whatever can happen. And without a doubt, there's going to be some new opportunities that come out of this. Band is important, and I'm number one band. I think people that know me would say that, but we're going to have the opportunity to do other things. Listen to like the partnerships with some of the HBCU ensembles. That's awesome, and especially in from a Big Ten standpoint, like you said, where it's like, all right, new shit. Like we don't have the time for this, but you do.
Yeah.
We're going to have time. I think at the high school level to be able to teach our kids some different things that aren't just about being in an ensemble. And that's admittedly that's a scary part, even for band directors, where it's like, all right, how do I lay this out, and how do I lay this out in a virtual world or in some kind of hybrid format? But there's a level of excitement with that too.
I totally agree. This is so fascinating to just watch you two talk. Professor Hauser, I love what you're saying about focusing on the process, and since we don't have as much of a defined product right now, really focusing on process-based learning, getting a lot of individual feedback to all the students, and providing them with skills that can transfer to other band situations, other music situations, and other career and life situations as well. I also love that you guys must have predicted what our next question was going to be, which was about how you sort of approach music and visual teaching in this new environment. So we're going to go ahead and move on to a little bit more the nitty gritty. So I was wondering, what kind of personal protective equipment or other safety precautions are you guys going to be using in your marching bands or indoor ensembles, such as barriers or masks or other precautions that way? I know, Professor Hauser, you mentioned the twice weekly tests that you guys are going to be using. So, Mr. McAdams, would you care to talk about this?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the public school systems probably do not have the resources to do twice weekly tests as much as I think every single superintendent in the country would love to have that happen. So, but from a music standpoint, the aerosol study results that have been out over the course of July, I think that's where people need to be at right now. That seems to be the best avenue to get performing ensembles back onto their feet, both from an indoor standpoint and an outdoor standpoint. So right now, we're kind of focused on our marching band here at our school. So we've already ordered, the bell covers and like that's all. I think I got my shipping notice. It showed up today, a couple of days late after camp, but at least we have that for next week. And so we'll start, deploying all that next week. Obviously we're keeping kids, at the distances that they need to be at. There is some definite, different, in addition to that aerosol study, there's some research that's coming out as well that is dealing with runners and slipstreams behind them. So we kind of have to take that into account too. And that's providing some unique distancing challenges, as we're trying to, what kind of step size, how far can you stretch the step size before this is not actually, musical. And now it's just a bunch of people standing on a field separated by, large distances. So, we're navigating through all that. But I think, if anyone has not seen that research yet, and Barry, I'm not going to speak anything about that because, when you got one of the guys that's on the committee, I'm gonna shut up about that. But I think that's the place to go, for a starting ground for any school program in this country.
Yeah, and you've got it, Justin. You're all over it. It's great to hear. And, I think everyone's on that track with when those bell covers show up. It seems like it's going to be like just a couple days too late. But, the great part is that you've got that ready to go for the fall. And, I think that's, part of this, talking about the protection that we've got, this can be a really scary thing for a lot of folks. And so I think, part of this as educators, as students that are looking at this, we have to enter this in a place of being flexible, being patient, being empathetic, and being understanding. And I know that's not necessarily a materialistic type of protective aspect of what you're looking at, but I think part of this is this mindset that we've got to understand that everyone's going to deal with this differently. Oftentimes in our large ensembles, we kind of treat things as, okay, so here's the instructions for everyone. And I find myself, and I'm sure, Justin as well, and many educators across the country, that we are looking at different ways of presenting this material more than ever before. Because we do know that there's going to be some, immune compromised families that are involved. We're not just dealing with, a perfectly healthy student that's coming into our ensemble. We may not have any idea what they're going home to or what their experiences are. And we've got students that they may not even know. And so those are some things that I think we just have to be extra careful. And I think it's really easy for all of us in the band world, right? We're all wired this way. This is like the fiber of our being, like, okay, so here we are. It's August 7th. I should be doing this right now. And a lot of us are finding ourselves, let's be honest, I doubt Justin and myself, or even yourselves, we would probably not be doing something like this if we were truly in a normal time frame. We'd be okay.
I'd be showing DCI semifinals to my band.
Exactly. So yeah,
on a podium or something.
Yes. So I think, when we look at this, I think we've got to enter this with the mindset is just as important as all of the physical things that we're looking at as well. So, I'm just, if it's okay, I'm going to go through a very Cliff Note version of this. Of just saying again, we need to mask everything. Okay, you've got to make sure that the mask fits. And this was the latest information that came out yesterday, which, I'm sure many of you are like, well, duh, don't you want the mask to fit? Yes, some people have not done that. So you need to make sure that it's, again, a little more form-fitting around your nose and needs to cover the mouth. If you haven't heard this information, you also need to wear a mask when you're playing your instrument. Well, how do I do that? Well, again, taking a surgical mask and you slit that. Make sure it's off your face when you do that, please. But we're trying to mitigate the aerosol production as much as possible. And there are cloth versions coming out. There's a variety of different things. And there are some technically that are better than others. But let's be honest. Just cover your face with that. And it can be a gaiter as well. So, those things that cover your neck and all of that as well. We've developed we've kind of prototyped something for the marching Illini, like many are, that's going to make sure it's not like this flap even. It's just this opening, and then it completely condenses and wraps around that mouthpiece. We're looking at, again, that mitigation to make sure that that's limiting the aerosol production. The bell covers, as Mr. McAdams was talking about, that's a very important part as well. There's some new information that came out that, there needs to be some additional material, but let's be honest, right now, as long as you cover the bells, that's going to help mitigate this as well. So I know some band directors probably heard some of the information that came out yesterday, like, oh my gosh, do I need to buy a new one? No. Any little bit that you add on to the instrument's going to help. When you look at clarinets, oboes, saxophones, we're dealing with tone holes and we're dealing with the bells as well. So my one thing to, kind of hit home, and I don't know if we've exactly heard this yet, but, all of this is expensive. And I think we need to look at this from a couple different perspectives. If you're going to add bell covers to a clarinet, if you're going to add bell covers to, the saxophone, it's going to help to a certain extent, but you've got to realize, again, those tone holes are going to be open and there's still going to be aerosols coming out of that instrument. So do you go full force and get those bags? That's something to think about. Inside, I'll be honest with you. What are we doing with our woodwinds at Illinois? we're not going to be adding bell covers because I'm not adding those bags. But why is that? Everything we do is outside with the marching Illini. We're not doing anything inside. Everything inside is restricted. If we have inclement of weather, as you heard from Justin earlier about, hurricane coming through, you just shut it down. We have typical indoor spaces to go to, but they're not large enough. So that's an important part. Mask everything, yourself, your instrument, and that's going to help a lot. As you heard as well, 6 foot social distancing. When we're outside, you just got to do 6 feet. And a lot of folks in band world, they're going 4-step intervals, which is 7.5 feet anyway. It just looks better on the grid. If you're not doing that, that's okay. But again, it's easier to see on a yard line in between. So stick with that. Do we have to worry? There's a recommendation about going 9 feet for the trombones. Outside, I don't think as much. 6 feet still works. It's inside that we're really looking at that 9 feet front to back because of how long that trombone slide will go, and with the spit keys and how that the water keys from there and how the droplets can kind of project from that point in time. Something to think about, outdoor versus indoor rehearsals. We've got to limit everything, or it's recommended to be within that 30-minute range. If outside, 30 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes, and then you can get back to playing for another 30 minutes. What does that do? That allows the aerosol production that's been done. You kind of create this plume and this cloud over the group that you've got out there. Even if it's, a small group of 50, or if you're able to get 100 or even more out there, even if you're socially distanced, it's still, contributing to this plume and to this cloud of aerosol production. So play for 30 minutes, take a break for 5 minutes, which is healthy for your students anyway, and especially geographically, if you're down south where Kelley is and it gets hot down in the Carolinas, you want that water break. But just make sure you, again, have your own water bottle. Don't be sharing water bottles. And again, stay 6 feet apart. That's the difficult part. And wear that mask as well. So that's an important part. If you're inside, you need to limit to those rehearsals as much as possible to the 30 minutes. We get into the air change rates, and we're dealing with HVAC systems at this point. And the HVAC systems, the air change rate, the standard should be 3 changes per 60 minutes. And what that means is your HVAC system is what's replacing the air and keeping the air moving in an indoor space. So if you're not having at least 3 air changes within that 60 minutes, those aerosols that are, you think about this, why does everybody get sick when it's flu season and when it's around, the winter months, whatever that is, depending on where you are? Well, again, this isn't just COVID related. This is like any bacteria. This is any virus that's out there. So many more people get sick from this because sometimes that air change rate is not high enough. So we limit to 30 minutes, and then before the next group of students come in or that same group comes into that space, you need to allow at least 1 air change rate to take place. So you need to find out from your facilities folks, and I know for most of us on this should be up to our band directors and our other music educators out there. But again, we should have that air change rate at least once. It's still recommended to have 3 ideally when we're talking about inside. So that's something to kind of think about as well. The other part of this is, again, just proper hygiene, as we've heard from day one, right? Wash your hands. Have hand sanitizer readily available. 70% alcohol. If it's below that, it's not going to do anything. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your mask. When you take your mask off, use the mask or the gaiter. Don't touch anything that is touching your mouth or your nose, obviously. If you're using a cloth version, wash that regularly. To the point of, if you're playing on a regular basis, have one for each day and then wash those. That's going to be the healthiest. If you're using a regular surgical mask, you can't reuse those. You've got to make sure you have a new one. I know some of these are obvious, but again, it's amazing what we've seen out there, what's taking place. So that's kind of the Cliff Note version of what we need to do to be, protected. Some folks are always asking about face shields. Face shields are only going to take care of the droplets. It has nothing to do with aerosol production at all. So, use that information as you see fit. But simply putting a face shield on isn't going to necessarily protect you from being in a band world when instruments are playing around you and all those aerosols. And, let's be honest, choral settings as well, speaking, theater, speech, all those things where enunciating words all the videos show that aerosol production of how much aerosol is put out there when we're saying certain consonants and things like that to enunciate. So just be careful out there. Yep.
That was a great Cliff Notes version of all that.
Thanks. Hopefully it wasn't too boring.
People that are doing the scientists watching this, maybe Joe and Kelley, if you're able to post the link to the video that they did yesterday, like the whole release of all this, I think it's really important for people to see just some of the visualizations and the graphs. I mean, it's one thing to hear someone talking about it, but when you see graphs, that adds another layer to validity to the research. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the most important things and one of the main points that we really wanted to get out of this discussion was, looking at the science and what the experts are saying about sort of these precautions that we should be taking. And I know, sometimes those charts can be a little confusing for a lot of people. So just having that perspective to sort of really break it down is helpful. Professor Hauser, I think you gave us all a lot to think about, but also a lot to work on and bring to our ensembles as well. So just moving on from that, so we talked a lot about, just sort of the hard steps we're taking to make sure every student is safe, is protected, and sort of the protocols that we're taking to make this transition into the fall season. But I'd love to transition sort of into a less concrete sort of topic, and the section really about culture and how we're developing that in this era. So just as a question, what are you doing to promote culture in your ensembles, especially in the face of reduced face-to-face instruction?
You want to lead or you want me to?
You go first this time.
Okay. All right. Well, I think part of this has a lot to do with what our culture already is. And I don't know. I guess part of this kind of zeroes in on what kind of educator each of us are. And if we are, I don't want to say if we're making changes now to think about what we are doing culturally for our students, I kind of wonder what is our goal to begin with when we were teaching pre-COVID. And I know I'm kind of batting around the bush here, but I think part of this is like if our culture already isn't focused on our students and their care, I think we need to again look through that lens again, and this time period gives us that opportunity to do so. But I think in a lot of ways, I think for those that have had students at the center of their program, we're just zeroing in a little bit more, checking in, and asking how people are. As I said earlier, being flexible, being more patient, with even to the point of some deadlines. And I'm not trying to say give a free pass by any means, but I think there's a lot that we have to look at because there's a lot of people dealing with things that we're not always going to know. And I think too often we assume, well, everyone's on the same playing field and, home life is great, academic life is great, the financial situation of all of this. I mean, we're dealing with some folks that have historically been financially okay, and now many people have lost their jobs. Many people, over 1 million people, are on unemployment in this country and even beyond. And so, the fact that we have some of our students still participating in our programs goes back to this phrase that I think we all have, but we may say it a little bit differently. And, this is people need the band, but the band needs people. And when you look at this, this has a lot to do with, again, yes, social emotional learning, but what are we really doing to make sure that we're supplying a safe environment and providing a safe environment for all of our students? And I think a big part of that is, do you know their name? Are you able to check in with them from time to time? If they're having a difficult time and you can see that on their face, it's okay. Hey, I notice you're not yourself. Are you doing okay? Or sending even a quick note, hey, I'm just checking in, and if you want to talk about anything, let me know. Those little things are going to go a really long way. Again, it goes back to the saying, people don't really care how much you know, they care how much you care. And, that can be said so many different ways. and so much more eloquently than what I just did there. But ultimately, it comes down to, again, your care for your students. So that culture is, we've got this phrase that we use, and Kelley's used to hearing it, and Joseph has heard it too many times, I'm sure, with MI. But, leaders create cultures, and cultures create leaders. And the culture that we have already created are creating those leaders. And I don't mean leaders with a title. I'm talking about leaders in our ensembles that care. I look at a leader as being the greatest band member or the greatest ensemble member that we have out there. I don't care what that title is after that. And I often joke, I'm the village idiot of this profession. I don't care, how many titles are after that name. It's really about caring for people. And I think when you genuinely are centered in that, you don't have to talk about that a whole lot. People know that already. And it's harder, I feel, yes, with larger ensembles when we don't have this chance to meet face to face. But again, our students talk, and new students coming in, our previous students are talking with them already and saying, hey, this is how this all goes down. And if you have any issues, this is who you need to talk to, or take this class from this person and things like that. So in the overall scheme of this, I hope that we're not having to pivot too much from where we've been already. And if we are, that's not judging anybody by any means, but we've got an opportunity that I'm going to be very optimistic, when COVID leaves us and we return to normal, we are able to carry on with a very student-centered and a very student-based program. And it kind of goes back very simplistically to 3 different types of educators that are out there. And this is not a music education textbook, so this is not taken from any, dissertation by any means. This goes back to the village idiot side of things from Barry Hauser. There are people that care simply about the music, and they're going to do anything to make music. And I love that. They're very passionate about it. They love music, and that's great. I love music too, but there are different ways to get there. Then it's about doing something so they get the glory and honor and recognition. I'm sorry, but you know what? There are other professions out there that if you want that recognition and glory, go do that. You don't have to be a music educator. There are easier professions to do that. Being a music educator, if you're trying to get that recognition and glory, you're putting in too much time and effort to get that recognition, especially now. And then there are those educators that focus on students. And you know what's amazing? When you focus on students, whether you want it or not, it's amazing how the music comes together and how students will work for you. No matter if they have a lesson program or if they are just trying their best every day. And it may not sound like a classically trained musician, but their heart is in it. I'm going to take those students, all the time. And then whether you want it or not, there's recognition and accolades that come with that. And I don't think, for most of us, that's not why we do this. We do this because of our students. And in COVID times, why are we fighting so much for this? It's because we want our students to have a place to go to. We want to, again, make music with them, teach music, share our experiences. They share their experiences with us. So we continue to create this great family and community of music making. And just think, when we're able to get back together someday and we can make music once again together, it's just going to be a glorious moment. So there's my 2 cents for that. Probably worth a penny. That's it. But
Thank you so much. Justin, do you have anything you want to add?
Maybe I should have gone first. I think, one of the things that I've always focused on, with my groups is that the rookie experience, the new member experience is key. Whatever a new person has in their freshman year, or if it's their sophomore year, their first year, that is what makes the rest of their high school band career period. And so I've had this conversation with our upperclassmen, over the last couple of weeks that, this is different for the upperclassmen because it's not what they knew. But for the freshmen right now, this is all they know. And so, the goal is to kind of keep something going for them so that when they become upperclassmen, they have something to kind of look back on and see where they've grown from, but also to remember where they came from. That the reason that they're feeling that cognitive dissonance right now is because of the upperclassmen that came before them. and provided a great experience for them when they were freshmen. So, keeping that tradition of a lasting impact onto the next generation has to be key, especially in this little world that we're all finding ourselves in. And then whatever Barry just said, because he said it.
No, I love that part too about the new students. So that's great. Thank you, because that's huge. So that's a big void that I left out. So again, great partners in crime. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That actually leads really nicely into our next question is, what can the students who are watching this call right now do to help develop that community aspect and the positive, inclusive culture that we're all looking for?
All right, I'll go first on this one. And that, I spent some time thinking about this one, when you guys sent me the question, but also this was something we were dealing with just this week, with, all right, we finally have everyone on campus and doing this. I've said from the very beginning that we need to make sure that social component exists even in a virtual environment. But I'll admit it's hard for the adult to know sometimes how the kids need to be able to connect. And so, for the students that are listening right now, don't assume that we know all the answers on this right now. Because we are still, we're still worrying about the logistics of, how do we make sure that everyone shows up today and who doesn't have all those things that usually happen, a lot easier in other worlds. But if you've got an idea, I guarantee if you go to your director and say, hey, I want to do this, there's no director in this country that's going to go, no, that's a bad idea. They're going to go, great. What do you need from me? And let's make that happen. Not to say that we're out of touch with what you guys need, but it's definitely something that some of us might need a little bit of help with right now, because everyone's coming from such different virtual learning environments, especially high school seniors, coming into college freshmen. Oh my gosh, I cannot even imagine what someone's going through if they're coming into a college band program going, well, I knew what high school band was, but this is different. So yeah, please, don't think any idea is a bad idea at this point, because I think all of us have thrown every idea up against the wall too, and some of them haven't stuck, but some of them will too.
Yeah, that is so great. And I think right along with that, because part of that, what you were saying, Justin, is so true. Even if we do have an idea, which, there's some of us out there that are trying to think that, oh yeah, I know how kids think these days. It doesn't come across the same as it does from a student. So I think that's an important part at all levels. I think the other message out there as well is, it is so important that you take those ideas that you have, yes, and run those by your directors, but also look at that from the perspective of there's a lot that you can do to help your director. Simply asking, is there anything that I can help with? And most likely the band director is going to say, no, I'm good. I'm just trying to figure this all out. But this gives you that opportunity, as Justin shared, to take a look at these other ways to interact with people and going through the roster and finding out where the new students are. And maybe just as a drum major, as a section leader, or even as a member of the band saying, hey, my name is such and such, and I just wanted to welcome you to the band program. Do you have any questions about anything? Most of our opportunities, I always talk with our student leaders, I'm like, put yourself in your shoes when you were first walking in, either high school or college. And what was it like? I still remember my days as an 8th grader walking into a high school marching band and like, oh my gosh, are you serious? And then same thing at the collegiate level. And I think I's even bigger because that, I'm coming from small town USA and small town in Indiana and then hitting this huge marching band at the University of Florida. And I'm like, wait a minute, this marching band could be the size of the town that I grew up in. It's just a completely different dynamic. So when you look at these things, don't underestimate what you can do as a student leader. And don't necessarily wait on that director to tell you what to do, where a lot of our cultures are structured that way, right? Band directors will come and say, all right, I want you to go and take care of this. And you take those action items and away you go. And you're great at it. But again, this is just going right in tandem with what Justin has shared. that we really need to look at things from the perspective of think outside the box. A big word for me in all of this since March has been, this is our chance to reimagine. So you as a student leader, reimagine what you can do in this leadership role to impact and to cultivate relationships. Make it something that is so much bigger than the ensemble itself. Because let's be honest, and we have this saying, and again, this is very applicable to everything that takes place. 20 years from now, you're not going to remember the show that you did. 20 years from now, you're not going to remember the drill that you did. Sorry. But when we look at this, you're going to remember the relationships that you had. You're going to remember your friends. You're going to remember the trip that you were able to take, which I know there's not a lot of trips right now, but hopefully that will return soon. You're going to remember those moments and the people that you spent time with. And that starts with you taking that first step and taking the initiative to welcome new students, or welcoming even those returning students that have maybe felt like they didn't belong. We need to be so inclusive. We need to take extra steps to be inclusive, to be welcoming, and to understand that everyone's coming from a very different background, a very different situation, a very different mindset. And we need to look at that from the perspective of, again, flexibility, patience, and being inclusive. And the more that we do that, the action items that we need to take care of to get the job done in band, if we're learning drill, if we're learning music, that's the easy part because we've already established trust in the relationships that are there. So rely on one another. Rely on one another. And if you don't find the answer, ask. It's okay to say, I don't know. It really is. And I think as leaders, and I think we as directors too, anytime we say, I don't know, we feel like that's an insecurity of ours. And we feel like, oh gosh, I failed. Well, no, it doesn't mean you fail. It just means we're all learning. So say, I don't know if you don't know the answer, but I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, that's all so fantastic. I mean, Justin, I love that point you brought up about, just the topic of the way directors and students interact with each other, and Barry, you expanded upon that as well. I think that's really important, and to just sort of build upon that even more, just to hear from your guys' perspective as directors, for our students, what are some projects or initiatives or even some individuals who have really motivated you as people and as band directors and have kept you going through this difficult time?
Whew, boy.
Yeah, exactly.
And Joseph, you want to specific to this time, or along our career? What are you aiming for here?
Whatever you feel comfortable talking about.
Oh man, okay.
That's sort of a.
How long do we have to? How long is this going for tonight?
Yeah, exactly. I think career-wise, there's so many people. There's so many people that have in a lot of ways. I'm not trying to say that I'm not who I am based on, myself, because I am. We all create ourselves to a certain extent. But in a lot of ways, I look at so many people that have contributed to a big portion of myself. And I mean, that starts with, my parents and how they decided to, the upbringing. And then you start looking at music teachers along the way. They've been very impactful. My elementary music teacher, Kathy Van Dyne, that's when I first started singing. And that was really kind of the first track of getting into some of this musical world, because she just kind of set that path on fire. My band director, who has since passed, unfortunately, and unexpectedly, but, Dan Fortlander, he was instrumental in, developing passion for this activity and saying, oh my gosh, like you can make a profession out of this. There's so many things. And then you get into the collegiate level, of course, all of our mentors that we've had there. My trumpet professor, Joyce Davis, Dr. David Waybright, director of bands at Florida. I mean, there's just an endless number of people. Jim Keene, when I did graduate work at Illinois, Pete Griffin, who was director of the Marching Illini, my predecessor, Gary Smith, for sure, has been someone. And then we look at all these greats that are, out there that influence us in, maybe not direct ways, but, in these times, I'm going to say a lot more of that inspiration has really come from my students. I don't want to get too, emotional or sappy here, but, I think about what our students go through daily. And when you start to feel like, oh gosh, I don't know if all of this is really worth it, or what we're doing right now, this whole thing may just get shut down in a month anyway. Is it worth it? And what has been very telling is just the perseverance of our students and understanding where they are and being open to hear that voice. And that has been a tremendous driving force. The other part, my own family here at home. I mean, this kind of off topic, but I mean, we've had more family dinners together since my kids have been alive now than ever before. And, so I guess there's a positive to COVID, right? This is putting a lot of things in perspective, whether we have families or not. I think we're finding and looking through a different lens of finding maybe a better balance to things. And that's not saying that we care less about our activity, but I think it does have a lot to do with we can maybe do the same things that we were doing before, but maybe we can do it in a healthier way and maybe even be more efficient and impactful simply by taking a little more time, taking a couple steps away from some of these things, as opposed to going, 200 beats per minute with everything that we do. And I think there's a lot to be said about that. So I know that's kind of the quick answer to all that, because I think a lot of people out there are very impactful, and I wish we could give a novel about each of them, but we don't have time to do that. And I don't know. I draw a lot of inspiration currently from my students and certainly my colleagues as well. Hearing from colleagues around the country, this is the first time we're really in this truly all together. And same things. Justin and I, this is the first time that we've had any interaction, and I think there's a natural empathy, there's a natural connection, because we all know, whether it's high school, middle school, elementary, college, I don't care what level it is, in a lot of ways we are going at this together because we're just simply trying to provide opportunities for our students to do this safely, to provide engagement, to make sure that they're healthy, to make sure we're healthy, and to make sure we keep music education alive.
Yeah, listening to Barry talk, and I'm going through, all of my music teachers, and the guy who started me on trumpet, Dave Thomas, when I was, a hot shot, I thought I was good in fifth grade. But I have to say,
not to interrupt, but I knew I like trumpet players unite. So great.
Yeah,
good job.
Yeah. And most of my students have heard this story because I use it when I talk to them when they're in eighth grade. But I would not be here, right in this chair doing this if it wasn't for my high school band director, Bob Kenny. Believe it or not, like, I was going to quit after eighth grade, and the only reason I joined high school band was because we went on a cruise to the Bahamas. Like, that is my only reason why I'm still sitting here right now. But that changed my life, and then it was all right. This band thing's kind of cool. Uniform's a little weird, but that, we all get over those kinds of things. My college band director, Heidi Sarver, lasting humongous impact on my life. Obviously, George Parks, this is my summer. This is what I do. That has been a humongous influence on just who I am as a teacher. I think Barry, Greg Martin and Greg Martin and Andy Yozviak at Westchester University. Those guys have been, they're right down the road from us, and they've done an amazing job in leading some discussions around the area for us, but at the same time, just as mentors too. I'll tell you what though, like watching other teachers, not just in the music profession, but watching other teachers that, your classroom teachers, if you will, and seeing them struggle and persevere through all of this as well. I think that's kind of been an inspiration lately. Yes, we're all in this from a music world together. We have our own, problems that we have to figure out, but this is rocking the entire education world. And I think we're all kind of drawing some strength from everyone else too. Like, all right, we're not all just on an island. We've got to be able to figure this out together. So.
I absolutely agree. I think High School Musical said it best. We're all in this together. So, so to kind of start to wrap some things up, I would like you to provide some final thoughts, advice, or motivations for students we have watching this call, We may have some band directors tuning in as well, or just other people who care about the activity. So any final thoughts or motivations you want to provide as we conclude our conversation today?
I think for students, for directors, excuse me, you are at your best when things are at their worst. And I think we could all agree this is down there at this point. Everything that we know and everything that kind of has driven us to be involved in music in some way, shape, or form isn't happening right now. But we have to also be a rock. We have to be a rock for our students. And if it's a student, you have to be a rock for your peers. People are going to go through a multitude of emotions this upcoming school year. And they're going to look to strong people, and they're going to look to strong people for guidance. And we can be that. More than likely, kids aren't going to be able to hang out in the band room this year. And that part hurts, from a director standpoint and from a kid standpoint. But we've got to figure out other ways to create that connection. I don't have all those answers, and admittedly, I'm still trying to figure all that out on my own too. But that, I think, has to be our goal, is that we are that the port in the night and the lighthouse and you'll get where I'm going with this one. So
yeah, excellent advice. Again, similar in terms of we've heard this so many times, and at first it sounded like, man, this is such a great saying. This is a great response to any webinar, and I'm so sick of saying it now and we're all sick of hearing it. We know this is different. It's already different. It's not, it's going to be different. It's already different. It's been different. And, our new normal, whatever that is. I hate that phrase now too, just because, it already starts to say that what we've experienced in the past, we're not going to be able to experience again. And I don't necessarily believe that. We do know that things moving forward for at least this fall, until further science is done, that it's going to have a very different look. And for a lot of us out there, we're not really, we don't really like change. We can be resistant to change. And we see this in our band programs. We see this in our leadership groups pre-COVID. It can be whatever situation. This is a time, though, that we've got to, again, work on this together. And, number one, if you're feeling alone, it's really easy to do that in this time period. Reach out. Don't wait, and don't think that you're strange or weird because you're having these feelings. You need to reach out to someone and find that connection. And again, as Justin shared, we are looking at this from a lot of different lenses. How can we do this through Zoom? How can we do this virtually? How can we do this 6 feet apart? So many of us crave wanting to be together, and then we get together, and it's better than, being at home. But I mean, we're still wearing masks. We're still 6 feet apart. Yeah, exactly. We get to know everyone's eyes a whole lot more. Are they smiling behind there? What's going? I mean, there's so many things we can't necessarily communicate as we have in the past. So. And same thing musically speaking, marching band, concert ensembles, most of those are going to be moving to chamber groups if we're so lucky to do some things inside based on, again, where we live. We've got to persevere. We've got to be there for one another. And I think, my big theme lately has been, we need to find your why. Each of our whys are going to be very different for each of us. My why is different than your why. So why are we doing this? Why are you doing this? And find out truly where those passions are and what's motivating you. We know motivation is intrinsic. We can't teach that, right? We can show that, we can model it, but you can't, I've got motivation, I'm going to pass it on to Kelley. I have motivation, I'm not going to pass it on to Joseph, and so forth. No, these are things that people witness and experience, and then it's something inside of us. So when we look at that, find that why. We know that we have to change the what. Right? Or we have to change the how, We have to change the how. My gosh, Hauser. The how we do things.
Mr. Morrison would not be happy with you.
Yeah, I know, and I've been saying this for a long time. We've talked about that. Yeah, we got to change the how of what we do, and that's an important aspect of this as well. That the how we teach things, the how we do music, the how we do life is all different. But we've got to continue to teach the what. And the what is what's important as well, that we don't deviate from that. That what may look a little different, as we venture out and do some of these things differently. It may not be that we get to play a marching band show, but it may be that we're working on musical concepts. It may be that we don't get to do this live, but we're going to do something on Zoom, and I'm going to play a passage for you, and then you play it back. There are ways to make this work. It's just not what we're accustomed to. So again, we've got to stay together. We've got to make sure we rely on one another. And again, biggest thing of all, engage with one another. And all of us have different levels of that. So don't lose track of that. Don't isolate yourself so much that, again, your friends, your teachers, and so forth, that engagement's not taking place like it normally does. We need to engage with one another. It's healthy. We know that. And that's an important part of where we are in all of this, to make sure that we all stay healthy physically and mentally in COVID times.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, it is just about that time where we're gonna have to be closing this down. But again, you both gave us so much to think about and sort of digest. One about sort of the science and the protocols and what the experts are saying about COVID and how we can apply that to our return to the classroom. But just as importantly, how we can keep the culture and the spirit of our bands going. I think that's, Barry, you talked about the what, how, and why. If we think about, why we're doing this, why we're still taking the trouble really to move on through this difficult time. I think focusing on that and allowing the students and the directors that may be watching to sort of digest all of this is going to be really helpful. There's no really organic way to sort of end something like this, but I want to thank both of you for being here, for contributing your expertise and your knowledge. I think it's been a really productive chat. Kelley, if you have any final thoughts that you wanted to share.
It's just so great to watch people who have inspired Joseph and I as much as you two have, interact with each other. And like you were saying, connect on the common grounds that you all have and that we're all sharing. And I totally, just listening to you talk has inspired me and motivated me to push through all the stress and the unknowns and letting go of what I can't control and focusing on what the ways that we do have influence over our groups, particularly socially, or just in inspiring all these new ideas for us and for hopefully for everyone who's watching too. Thank you again for both taking time out of your Friday evenings on August. It might not be as busy as it usually is in August, but it's still your time, and we really, really appreciate having you guys here. So thank you so much for contributing to this conversation, and best of luck to your programs going forward this fall and this next school year. And I hope everyone stays safe, stays healthy, gets to interact with each other, collaborate in some form, and looking forward to the return to music as well. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
You too.